Let's have a conversation about Cyberpunk 2077. Obviously, as we've learned over the last week or so, the launch has been quite a bit of a mess as Sony has pulled them from the PlayStation Store, Microsoft is expanding the refunds available to gamers, and obviously we had that initial reaction on this channel, but I wanted to do a follow-up to talk about what we can learn from this situation, both as gamers, as developers, as publishers, as a business in general, and what are some things that we can do moving forward, if there's anything that we can do moving forward, to kind of prevent something like this from happening. So let's just dive right into it. Obviously, Cyberpunk 2077 isn't the first game ever to experience bugs. That would be ridiculous to say that. And despite all of the graphical issues and crashes and save state issues that have come out since Sony pulled them from the PlayStation Store, I think it's important to talk about how we even got here in the first place. A launch like Cyberpunk 2077, I think, was likely inevitable. I don't know if it necessarily needed to happen to CD Projekt Red, but let me explain why I think this type of release was going to happen at some point. In the early days of video gaming, up until the Xbox 360, maybe PS3 launch era, video game patches and updates weren't really a thing. Yes, you could buy DLC on PC, which were otherwise known as expansion packs, but core gameplay and the core delivery of a finished game was closer to the definition of finished. That meant that if your game shipped with any type of bugs or glitches, it was there pretty much forever unless you reissued a brand new version and physical copy of the game and updated store shelves with a new unit. In a lot of ways, many different niches in gaming took advantage of these types of situations and these types of bugs, speedrunning being one of the most obvious examples of it, but you could also look at other gameplay glitches such as capturing Mew in Pokemon Red and Blue. But the point being that, for the most part, video game developers would do their absolute best to make sure that the product that they were shipping was finished, because there was no taking back whatever people are purchasing back then. However, as time went on and the introduction of the internet and online play was popularized in the home console, patches and updates to video games over the internet started to become more and more common. At first, they seemed innocent enough, as developers would patch a little bug here and there, or some sort of glitch that would allow gamers to exploit a gameplay, thus breaking the experience that the developers had intended for that game. Now, a whole separate conversation could be had as to the ownership rights of modifying your own game, and that has been a conversation in the past. But as time went on and as blockbuster titles found massive success, such as your FIFAs, your NBA 2Ks, your yearly release cycle games, Call of Duty in that mix as well, the line began moving closer and closer to being acceptable to ship a game with many bugs and many glitches, with the assumption that you could just patch it post-launch. Which is interesting, because a lot of the conversation in the gaming space tends to focus around yearly releases and whether or not that's good for the quality of games or for gamers themselves. If you're into sports video games, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, to make it clear, I'm not trying to blame developers or engineers or anyone that has a passion for delivering a high-quality video game. But as the video game industry became one of the largest entertainment industries in the world, naturally, investors, business people wanted to get in on that action to turn a profit. Which makes sense, right? You're a business, you need to make money so you can continue to deliver the product that you're trying to deliver. But as social media and internet culture has completely taken off and video games have hit the mainstream, building on hype and building on marketing and building on virality has become a core business practice of a video game. Therefore, you get teasers and trailers for games that are years and years out from launch, and what's worse, you get unrealistic expectations for a delivery date of a video game because they know that those can be patched post-launch. This isn't a criticism of post-launch updates and patches per se, but it is a symptom of a larger problem that the video game industry is facing that has ultimately led to this launch of Cyberpunk 2077. That is, gamers accepting updates and bugs in their full price finished title as an acceptable circumstance to their purchase and their game. I can't place blame entirely on gamers, although as consumers it is our responsibility to be more responsible and demand better things from our products. And I do think that moving forward, gamers should be more critical and not purchase games until they're closer to finished than they have been to date. Now, this isn't even the biggest issue facing Cyberpunk 2077, because underneath the rubble there appears to be a legitimately very good open world game. And maybe it's not a groundbreaking open world title that has completely revolutionized that genre, but it does appear like it's moving things forward. So for that, we do have to give the team at CD Projekt Red and the engineers there their due credit. However, as more and more suits become involved with the products that we love as gamers, we need to start becoming more responsible and more critical of the purchases we're making. Bugs and crashes should be an exception to games and not the standard. Of course, this is specifically referencing games that are charging full price for a final product launch. Games that sell at a discount for an alpha or a beta that then take that gamer feedback to implement into the final product, those are fine. Although there's an entire conversation to be had there as far as video games that are shipping as beta that don't ever get completed. But this point is a little bit of a double-edged sword, because I also think that gamers need to chill out a little bit when it comes to delays to a highly anticipated game. Obviously, with Cyberpunk, it was extremely ambitious and was delayed 3 times. And sure, you can have the conversation that my game works well on my 3080, 2080, 1080 Ti gaming PC. And this next part is also applicable to any PS5 and Xbox Series X gamers. Saying that, my game runs really well on my high-end gaming machine or my brand new next-gen hardware diminishes the legitimate poor experience that console gamers on PS4 and Xbox One are having. Of course, it's not everyone, so everyone just relax for a second and just listen to the points I'm making. But this game has been in development for a long time, and it's been marketed specifically for the PS4 and the Xbox One. I don't think it's acceptable to say, well, it should have just launched on next-gen hardware instead. Maybe that's true, but the fact of the matter is, it has been marketed for previous generation for quite some time. So to suddenly gatekeep the vast majority of gamers to new hardware would be a little unfair. Yeah, I completely get the point that 7-year-old hardware is starting to show its age, quite a bit, but you could still make it work. Go look at titles like God of War, The Last of Us Part 2, Spider-Man, Control. There are still titles that look fantastic and run relatively well on those base consoles. Hell, the most praised open world game of recent memory is Breath of the Wild, and that's running on the Nintendo Switch, which is definitely underpowered even compared to a base PS4 and Xbox One. Now, thankfully, the decision makers and investors over at CD Projekt Red, and hopefully the rest of the industry as well, have realized that you can only push gamers and consumers so far before they push back. The amount of refunds and the amount of value that CD Projekt Red has lost as a publicly traded company is undisputable, which is why I find it strange sometimes that some gamers are having a really hard time dealing and accepting some of this criticism. There is no reward to being the most loyal fan to any company in general, not just in gaming. But pushing back on these types of game deliveries is ultimately what pushes the industry forward and prevents future events like this from happening again. Or at least we hope so. I'd personally like to see gamers be a little bit more critical about bugs in their games, more patient when delays are announced, and then for game developers and publishers to not announce games prematurely, bring down the scope if it's necessary, and deliver high quality over high quantity. All the signs were there that there were problems with this game, legitimate problems with this game. You can look back at the launch week. CD Projekt Red wasn't allowing gameplay footage of review copies on PC until the day of launch. On top of that, they weren't giving out any console codes for, again, I can't reiterate this enough, the PS4 and Xbox One advertised versions of this game. The game that you're playing on your PlayStation 5 and your Xbox Series X today, right now, is a last-gen version. This isn't even the next-gen version. And this is where I will be extremely critical, because CD Projekt Red and the business decision makers there knew that they were selling you a broken product. And this is where I do tell some gamers to chill out a little bit and stop defending them so blindly. They sold people an incorrect, incomplete game. enjoy your game on your high-end PC, but the fact of the matter is that is not the experience the vast majority of gamers are having. And that's a distinction. I'm not making fun of you for enjoying your game. I'm going to buy this game eventually, but sending the message is more important that we need to start accepting games when they're finished, not before then. With that, any gamers or any people sending some sort of stupid, idiotic death threats, or harassing anyone online, or saying any sort of the stupidities that people can do on Twitter and all forms of social media, don't do that. That is ridiculous. It is not their fault. But what you can do is demand your refund, not purchase the game until it's complete, and hold other publishers accountable to that same degree. Because drama and controversy like this is taking away the focus from what it should have been in the beginning. A really fun, really popular video game that you and your friends could have talked about for quite a long time. Unfortunately, I don't think the reputation of Cyberpunk 2077 in particular recovers from this launch, but hopefully CD Projekt Red continues to deliver on their promises without overextending their staff to deliver the game that they had envisioned. So that's it. While this is specifically talking about the Cyberpunk 2077 example, I do think it's a symptom of the video game industry as a whole, and hopefully this starts moving the industry forward to getting back to a place where your full-priced product is closer to complete. Anyways, this was a follow-up to the last video I put up there, so if you got your refund, you're going to have to give your game back, but eventually you'll be able to buy it again, and that's what I plan on doing. Probably discounted once it's completed and once it's fixed, and if you're enjoying it, you're enjoying it, that's fine, but it still doesn't excuse that the business does deserve to be criticized for this. So, with that, thanks for watching. Top video games and top tech of 2020 is coming soon, so stay subscribed for that, and I'll catch you next time.